Welcome to Podnutz Daily for September 23rd, 2008, episode number 83. You guys ever use driverguide.com? This site is such a pain in the neck, but unfortunately they have almost every driver you need. But they just they offer a free service. I don't know if they always used to offer it free. I mean, you have free to an extent, and then you have to pay like a certain amount of money to get certain drivers. But I think it's all free now. But you have to, if you do the free service, you have to click through about 10 to 15 ads to get your driver. So annoying. You know, you can only complain so much because it's for free, and you're getting these drivers for free, but drivers are free anyway. I had to re-sign up again. I forgot my logon on all that information. I had to sign up again for that site. What a pain in the neck. What a inconvenience. But unfortunately, they do have a pretty big base of drivers, so if you can't find a driver, it's usually on Driver Guide. And actually, if you do a search for drivers and you can't find them online, a lot of other sites refer you over to Driver Guide because I think it's a commission-based system. I think they're actually making a commission on that. So, Driver Guide. This is my 2 cents on that. Had a computer today. It was too infected with viruses and spyware. I did my best to get everything off, and I did. Now here's what I run into, and this is what drives me crazy sometimes. You got to make a judgment call whether you want to do a reinstall or whether you want to try to get all the viruses and spyware off of a system. So this computer had lots of viruses and spyware, and I knew that, and I've been having a lot of luck with just removing all that stuff. But we went ahead and removed it. You know, I did Smith Fraud Fix. I ran Super Anti-Spyware and a couple other cleaning programs. There were some Vundo viruses on there, so I ran Vundo Fix, which is a recommendation from Mike Petro, and I was going to run Combo Fix, but I forgot. It doesn't matter. I didn't need to run them. The viruses were removed from the system, but the system was so crippled after that, I couldn't get any updates no matter how I tried to do it. I couldn't install Service Pack 3. It kept crashing. So what kills me is by the time I spent all this time on this system, getting all the stuff off and trying like mad to get it up and running, I ended up having to do a reinstall anyway. So it was like doing 2 jobs at once. But that's what happens sometimes. You make a judgment call, you go with it. If it doesn't pan out, you always have a reinstall to fall back on. So just a little frustrating. Okay, I had a Dell laptop today. It was a Dell 1401, I think. It's 14-inch small Dell laptop, and customer brought it in because it was having power problems. Well, I took the power adapter, hooked it up, and I checked out the system, and sure enough, after about 10, 15 minutes, the thing would turn off. It was charging the battery intermittently, and let's see what else it was doing. Then after it was charging the battery intermittently, it got to a point where even with the AC adapter in and the battery out, I could not get the thing to turn on. You know, I'm moving it around inside the jack, but you don't want to move the tip of the power cord too much around inside the jack, or you'll rip the jack off the motherboard. So I moved it around a little bit and tried to finagle it. So sometimes you can make a connection if you do it that way, and then you know if it's a power jack that needs to be replaced. The power jack was kind of loose, it felt like, but it was not. There was no indication it was getting power after that. So I said, all right, I got to really dig in there and see what's going on that motherboard. Opened up the whole thing, looked at the jack on the motherboard. It was soldered perfectly. The reason it was a little loose is because on that model, the piece of the motherboard that power jack is attached to is a very flimsy piece. So there is a lot of give, and it feels like that the jack is actually loose inside the computer. But it was soldered on fine. Everything was fine. I tested the connections with a voltmeter to check for continuity on certain points. And so I said, all right, while I had the whole thing apart, I plugged the power adapter in, and I tested to see if there was voltage going to the points on the motherboard. There was no voltage going to these points. At this point, I'm like, well, is the power adapter even working? I looked down at the power adapter, and the little green light that tells you that the power adapter is getting power was off. So that indicator light was off. And there was no power going to this computer, so the problem lies in the power adapter. It was the reason why I took the whole thing, and so I took the whole laptop apart for no reason. It was the power adapter the whole time. I didn't realize that it was an intermittent connection on the power adapter, and that's something you just got to look for. And I should have been paying more attention to that. There was on those Dell power adapters. You can actually take the part that you plug into the wall and it goes into the power brick, and then the power brick goes to the computer. You could actually take apart the connector from the wall to the brick. It actually comes out. And what was wrong was that was just loose. That was the whole problem with this computer. That was the whole power problem. And all I did to fix it was basically push the connector in and tighten it up. Everything worked fine after that. Another computer I wasted a lot of time on. But I did get footage of me taking it apart. So at least that's going to go in a laptop video collection. And maybe I'll pretend something was wrong with it just for the sake of the videos. Okay, the other day I went over to Micro Center, bought a whole bunch of parts. Finally got a good power supply tester. The power supply tester I used was an $8 piece of junk. It only tested a 24-pin connector, or a 20 to 24-pin connector. It was a piece of junk. It fell apart, so I finally ended up getting a new one. And this saved us a lot of time today. Had a couple power supplies where we weren't sure if they were bad or not. Just hook that power supply tester up. Look at the light indicators. Tells you if it's on or not. It also simulates having a load, which is something Carrie talked about before. It's called Dr. Power. I think it's by Thermaltake or Cooler Master. One of those power supply companies makes it. The construction isn't the best. It was like $19, but it does the job. In fact, we used it today. I'm going to talk about another thing. On an IBM, we had an IBM desktop called a NetVista. It's kind of like the Optiplex, like a Dell Optiplex. It's got a small form factor. And we took the problem with this computer was you'd push the power button in, and you could feel it. It wasn't actually pushing the button. The button was pushed all the way through, and it wasn't making the connection when you push the power button in. Well, my dad took this job on. Went in there, he saw that the connection wasn't making a connection when you press the power button, so he refastened the whole power button back onto the inside of the case, so it was secured, and then you could feel it when you press the button on the outside of the case that it was making a connection. Well, here's the thing I want to talk about. To get to the power button on these NetVistas, because it's a small form factor, you have to take a lot of parts off and get in there and then unattach it, and then you got to reattach it, and it's a pain in the neck to get to that part. It's not as simple as just popping off the front of the case, seeing the part, and fixing it. So we took it all apart, got it all connected, and he said he did what I usually do on laptops, and I call it a confidence repair, where you feel like the repair you did without even testing it is definitely making a connection. It was definitely the problem. So you put the whole computer back together thinking that you fixed the problem. And sometimes that doesn't work. Like I'll fix a power jack and I'll go, I know that was a problem. I fixed it. I test it while I'm there, but I don't test it as I'm putting the whole computer back together. I test it right after I do the repair, but I don't test it as I'm putting all the pieces back and go, I know this is fixed. I'm putting the whole